I'll tell you my story. My name is Michael. I'm 23 years old, and until a month ago, I was just an ordinary student in business school, barely passing most of my classes. I was in desperate need of money, and when I saw an ad saying that St. Mary's High School needed a night guard, I applied immediately. It wasn't my dream job, of course, but the pay was suspiciously good, and the interview was extremely strange. I met the principal, Mr. Alastair Crawford. He was a tall, thin man who always wore a black suit. His face was sharp, his gray eyes gleamed with a kind of intelligence that was both keen and frightening. I felt under my skin that something was wrong with this man. He looked as though he could read my thoughts. He asked me simple questions about my background, then stared straight into my eyes and said, "Young men your age usually run away from night jobs, son. They're afraid of the dark, but you're not afraid, are you?" I tried to sound confident and said, "Of course not." He smiled a smile that never reached his eyes and said, "Excellent, the job is yours. Just remember, during your shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., you must stay in the guard office at the main entrance. Leave it only for your patrol rounds every 2 hours, and never wander around the school after midnight unless absolutely necessary." The rules are clear. I agreed to everything. I needed the money. On the first night, I felt that strange sensation again. The school, full of life and noise during the day, became an entirely different place after dark. The shadows grew longer, and sounds seemed to echo from far away. The guard office was small, with surveillance screens showing the main entrances and some corridors. My first round around the courtyard in the main building was quiet, but at midnight something strange happened. As I sat scrolling through my phone, I heard a faint sound, a chanting voice, as if reciting in Latin. I grabbed the heavy guard's baton, which the principal himself had given me, and went out carefully. The sound came from the basement, where the boiler room and the old storage were. I advanced slowly, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a sword. When I reached the end of the staircase leading down, I saw light seeping out from under the door of the old storage room, and now I could hear other voices too, soft, synchronized whispers. I pressed my eye to the crack of the door and saw a sight I will never forget. Principal Crawford stood in the middle of the room, which was now cleared of the old boxes I had seen during the day. On the floor was a circle drawn in white chalk, filled with strange and frightening symbols. Around him stood about 10 people, men and women, all wearing black robes with hoods covering their heads. They were chanting that Latin hymn, their hands raised toward a bizarre statue in the center of the circle. It wasn't a statue of the Virgin or a saint. It was a twisted shape, half spider, half human, carved from glossy black stone. In the center of the circle, on a small table, there was a bronze bowl from which thick smoke rose, smelling foul, of rot, burnt flesh, and sulfur. I saw Crawford's eyes glowing with an eerie purple light. He held in his hands a massive leather-bound book, chained shut, and read from it in a deep, resonant voice. Suddenly, a cold wind blew inside the closed room, and the ground trembled beneath my feet. I saw the shadows on the walls move and stretch, as if detaching from the walls themselves. Then I heard a muffled scream, a scream of pain and terror that came from inside the circle itself, though I saw no one there. My hands shook, and I dropped my flashlight. The sound stopped abruptly. The chanting ceased. Crawford turned directly toward the door, as if he sensed me. I shut my eyes and backed away quickly, then ran through the darkness, climbing the stairs as fast as I could, back to the guard office. I sat there trembling, my heart pounding out of my chest. I hoped what I'd seen was just a dream or a hallucination from exhaustion. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps in the corridor, slow, confident steps. Crawford appeared at the doorway of the office, looking perfectly normal, though there was a faint smell of sulfur clinging to him. "Everything all right, Michael?" he asked in that calm, chilling voice. Yes, sir," I stammered, trying to steady my voice. "I just heard some noises." He smiled that cold smile again. "Old buildings make noises, son. Water pipes, expanding wood. Don't let your imagination fool you. Remember the rules. Don't wander after midnight." Then he left. That night, I realized this was no ordinary security job. I was trapped in a place where people practiced dark rituals, and their leader was the principal himself. In the following nights, I tried to stay in the office, but my fear and curiosity pushed me to go out. Each time I did, I heard or saw something new. Once, while walking along the third-floor hallway, I saw shadows moving on their own, twisting on the walls as if watching me. Another time, I heard whispers coming from inside locked classrooms, whispering my name. "Michael, come, look!" Cold voices that sent shivers down my spine. One night, while watching the surveillance screens, I saw something that froze my blood. On the camera covering the music hall, I saw pale, ghostly figures moving in the dark, dancing as if to silent music. Then suddenly they all stopped and turned their white faces toward the camera, as if looking straight at me, and then vanished. But the worst came on Friday night. I knew their rituals took place on Fridays. I decided to stay in the office and not move. But after midnight, I began to hear crying. It wasn't ordinary crying. It was the sobbing of a little girl. It came from the second-floor corridor near classroom 2B. I tried to ignore it, but the crying grew sharper, more desperate. I grabbed my baton tightly and went out. The sound led me to classroom 2B. I slowly opened the door. The room was dark, but moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating a desk at the back of the class. A little girl sat there wearing the old-school uniform, her back toward me. She was trembling as she cried. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaking. "Are you okay? How did you get in here?" She stopped crying. Then she turned around slowly. She had no face. Where her face should have been was a smooth, distorted surface. Then a mouth opened where her nose should be, and she whispered in a harsh, guttural voice, "Run. Run away, before you become one of us." I screamed and stumbled backward, then ran out of the room. When I looked back again, the room was empty. There was no trace of the girl. The next day, I went to the local library and began researching. I looked into the history of St. Mary's School. I discovered that it was built on the ruins of an old cemetery from the 18th century. There had been reports of children disappearing in the area over the years, but the cases were never solved. Then I found an old book on black magic and pagan rituals in the region. It mentioned a secret cult that worshipped an ancient being called Olgoth, a creature that fed on human fear and pain and granted its followers power and immortality in exchange for souls. Everything started to make sense. Crawford and his followers were offering sacrifices to that being. But where did they get their victims? Then I remembered. The school had an international student exchange program. Students came from faraway countries, and some of them disappeared, supposedly returning home suddenly for family reasons. No one ever asked questions. I was trapped in a nightmare. I was afraid to sleep, afraid of the dark, afraid of the sound of the phone ringing. I tried to resign, but Principal Crawford summoned me to his office. "I hear you're nervous, Michael," he said, stroking the cover of that leather-bound book on his desk. "I hope you're not planning to leave us. The pay is good, isn't it? And we appreciate loyalty." Then he looked into my eyes, and I felt as if my mind were sinking into a sea of darkness. "Remember, you signed a contract, a binding contract. You can't break it." I left his office knowing I couldn't escape. Crawford knew that I knew, and he enjoyed it. The decisive night came on the full moon. I knew something big was about to happen. The air felt heavy, unnaturally cold. Around 10 o'clock, I saw luxury cars entering through the school's back gate. There were more than usual. I decided I had to do something. I couldn't just stand by while this evil continued. I did my first patrol early, then returned to the office and called the police. I told them I'd heard suspicious noises in the basement, that it might be a break-in. They said they'd send a patrol. I hung up and took a deep breath. I knew the police couldn't stop Crawford, but I hoped they might at least disrupt the ritual. An hour later, while the ritual reached its peak, I heard sirens. Through the window, I saw the blue and red flashes of police cars. A wave of hope surged in me, but it quickly vanished. Crawford went out to meet the officers. I saw him talking to them, then laughing, shaking his head. Then he pointed toward the guard office. My heart started racing. The two officers walked toward me. "Sir, we got a report of suspicious activity," said the older one. "Sorry for the trouble," I said, trying to sound normal. "I heard noises in the basement. I'm new here, and I got worried." The officer glanced at his partner, then said, "The principal said you probably heard the old boilers. No need to worry. Everything's under control." I watched in disbelief as the police cars left. Crawford had handled it easily. Then he turned toward the guard office and raised his hand, waving slowly, smiling that triumphant smile. He knew I had called the police. After everyone was gone, one of Crawford's assistants came to me, a huge man in a black suit. "The principal wants to see you," he said. I knew this was my end, but I decided to face it. I followed the man down to the basement. This time it wasn't the old storage room. He led me to a hidden door behind the shelves, and we descended a spiral stone staircase leading to a natural cave beneath the school. The space was vast. In the center was the same chalk circle, but now it glowed with a sickly purple light. Crawford and his followers stood around it, but this time there was someone inside the circle, a new exchange student from Eastern Europe, tied to a stone pillar. His mouth was gagged, his eyes full of terror. "Michael," Crawford said in his deep voice, spreading his arms as if greeting a beloved guest. "You've finally joined us. You've walked in our darkness. Now it's time to see the light." "Let the boy go," I said, trying to hide my fear. Crawford and the others laughed. "We can't, son. Olgoth is hungry and we must feed him. But don't worry, you won't be a spectator this time." He gestured, and the two men behind me grabbed my arms tightly. "I've read about you, Michael," Crawford continued, approaching me. "You're a failure, lonely, with no family who cares. No one will miss you. You're the perfect offering." Then he began reading from that leather book. I felt a strange force pulling me toward the circle. I tried to resist, but it was like fighting a hurricane. I saw the stone statue begin to move, its eyes blazing with red fire. I saw the shadows swirling around us, their dark arms reaching for the bound boy, who was shaking violently. Then I remembered what that faceless ghost girl had told me. "Run, run away, before you become one of us." With all my strength, I shouted, "Alistair Crawford, Olgoth doesn't give you power, he enslaves you. You're a servant just like him." Crawford froze for a moment, clearly not expecting that. I saw doubt flash in his eyes for just a second. I seized the moment. I drove my knee hard into the groin of the man on my right. He screamed and let go. Then I smashed my elbow into the face of the other. They were strong, but the surprise gave me a chance. I ran toward the bound boy, but Crawford regained his focus. "Stop him!" he roared. The followers started toward me, but suddenly we all heard another sound. The school bell, ringing loudly, on its own. Its echo filled the cave. Then the doors of the chamber began to shake and slam. We saw ghosts emerging from the walls, not one, but dozens. They were children and teenagers, all faceless. Just like the girl I had seen, they were Crawford's victims. "No!" Crawford screamed. "This is impossible!" The ghosts advanced toward the circle. The purple light flickered. The statue trembled, as if in rage. I rushed to the boy and started untying him. He was shaking uncontrollably. "You're safe now," I whispered. "Wo men bi shuchikai jeli." He looked into my eyes, then behind me, terror filling his own. I turned and saw Crawford standing there, no longer human. His eyes were pits of darkness, his fingers turning into claws. "You've ruined everything," he roared, in a voice no longer human. But before he could attack me, the ghosts intervened. They swarmed around him, touching him with their transparent hands. Crawford screamed with a terror and agony I had never heard before. I saw the darkness being pulled out of him, as if the ghosts were absorbing his evil power. The circle collapsed. The purple light went out. The stone statues shattered into 1,000 pieces. The followers screamed and fled in every direction, abandoning their leader. Crawford fell to his knees, moaning. He turned back into a human, but looked like a frail old man, as if his life had been drained away. I grabbed the boy and ran from that cave, climbing the stairs, leaving a nightmare behind. In the morning, I told the police everything. When they returned, they found the old storage room, but no trace of the secret door or the cave. They did, however, find Principal Crawford in his office, sitting in his chair, dead. The coroner said he died of old age and heart failure, though he had been only 55. He looked 90. The boy I saved remembered nothing of that night. He said he had been walking to his dorm when he felt dizzy and woke up in the hospital. Of course, no one believed my story. They said I'd suffered trauma and hallucinated everything. I quit my job and left that city. But I know the truth. I know that evil exists, and sometimes it comes in polite forms, wearing a suit and standing in a fine office. And I know that those who died as victims, even in death, can find the strength to resist injustice. I can't sleep in the dark anymore, and sometimes when I hear a distant bell or see a shadow move strangely, I remember those nights at St. Mary's School. I know Crawford is dead, but Olgoth and his kind are still out there, waiting in the dark, looking for new night guards, new schools, new souls to feed their eternal hunger. And I know I'll never be safe, because the darkness remembers, and the darkness waits.